Carrie, you are brilliant, a brilliant communicator and a brilliant writer. I love what you offer in this book, the Michael Phelps as jockey illustration, in order to expose the utter insanity of the trans narrative. Can you recapitulate that for us? Because I think that makes the point as well as anything I've ever heard.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you. Well, Michael Phelps, obviously, we all know him to be this amazing swimmer. And, what if, this thought experiment, what if he had been born and been told he should be a jockey instead? It's much more popular to be a jockey. Why don't you become a jockey? And he's like, well, I've got these long legs. Well, why don't we just cut some of your legs off and move your feet to a different place, and then you could be a great jockey. And I think, it helps because it gets out of the confines of thinking about gender in this case. And instead, you're just thinking about the human body and what someone, the area in which we're really going to flourish. And, Michael Phelps should not really ever be near a horse as a jockey. And even if he has his feet removed, it's still not, or his feet moved up, part of his legs removed, it's still not going to make him an amazing jockey. And so, I think that thinking about it and thinking about these issues and the transitioning that we're doing, the surgeries that we're doing, it helps to look at them in a totally different context and just see the ridiculousness of it largely based on trends and trendiness and what's happening in what the culture is dictating to us. So
and you see the ridiculousness of it. It is ridiculous, and yet you have medical professionals that are at the top of their professions that are creating vaginas out of penises and penises out of forearms.
Yeah. No, it's the forearms and the kind of infections. I mean, this is the other piece that obviously people talk about, but I don't think we talk about enough, is just how lucrative this is. Because, when you create a penis out of a forearm, there's going to be years and years and years of infection and problems that are going to arise from that, because it's not what the forearm skin was made for. All of these kinds of problems are going to be arising. So not only do the hospitals get the money from the initial surgeries, but there's going to be this years and years of care, ultimately until probably an infection or something will kill that person. But it's just incredibly lucrative. It's like $1 million or something for all those years of care for this person that actually didn't medically need any of it. Nothing was wrong with this person, but all because psychologically they've been told that they can do this. That's why it's being done. So until we see a lot more lawsuits, I think, coming from the detransitioners, we're going to continue to see this being pushed through the hospitals because it's just so making so much money. And of course, Planned Parenthood has now obviously gotten involved in the administering of testosterone. So that's going to be another piece that they keep promoting, because you've got, little girls, the way they used to go get their nails done or something, waltzing into Planned Parenthood in a group of girls for them all to get their testosterone shots. It's amazingly lucrative.
And the specter of teen suicide.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's, a whole another piece that, that's the reason why doctors and psychologists are telling us that people have to do this. Would you rather have your daughter be a boy, or would you rather have your daughter be dead? That's the stark argument that they are making, that's why we have to do all of this intervention biologically into their bodies so that they won't kill themselves. Again, forgetting to mention that the suicide rates are actually worse after the fact instead of before.
I love the section in the book titled "The Way Home." Thank God for that section in the book. But you are candid. You say, if we do not reverse course, and you give evidence for this, it's the end of Western civilization as we know it.
Yeah. This is, I think, a startling piece. I found the work of J.D. Unwin, who is a sociologist in the 60s, and he talked about how cultures die. We know from Arnold Toynbee, many people know of him as a historian. His famous quote is that a civilization isn't murdered, it commits suicide. And you can see that in the fall of Rome and, other places very, very easily. But Unwin was interesting because he actually goes through, he was an agnostic. I mean, this was not a man with any kind of religious conviction, but he goes through and basically says, every civilization that has died kind of in the same pattern through this committing of suicide. And he said, when I found this one detail in a civilization, I knew it had about 100 years left. He said there will be three things from this one detail that will follow. And they are the end of monogamy, the end of faith, and the end of reason. And he said all of them start with when a civilization gets rid of the prohibition against premarital sex. So as soon as premarital sex is allowed and accepted in the culture, then all of those three things will follow. And it's fascinating. Probably if I had read this 50 years ago, I wouldn't have paid much attention. But now when we're seeing it so blatantly in front of us, the absence of faith, the absence of the capacity to reason, of course, the abandonment of monogamy, this man is on to something. And human nature, as much as we try to change it, just isn't really that malleable. And so these are really important things that we, have to keep in mind, and if we can't recapture them, then we really don't have a future in Western civilization, the way that we think things can go on. But yeah, incredibly insightful. He also, I think another point that N1 makes that's really interesting was just talking about how, just from an economy of time aspect, when part of the reason the devolution happens is because people are spending all this time on things that don't actually build culture. They're wasting time on relationships that aren't going anywhere. They're not having children. They're not focused on doing work that will help their family, all of these kinds of things. And we can see this, certainly in our own culture. We've got these surrogates that we have set out for men and women, between pornography and pets. Women and men are finding, other ways to sort of satisfy themselves, but these are not building culture through, these are not the ways in which culture is built. These are just energy wasters and dissipators. And that was his big point, is that's what happens in the culture, is the energy goes somewhere else instead of to building a future.
Yet in spite of all of what you have just said, and what I would say you have correctly said and eloquently described, you see glimmers of hope.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there are glimmers of hope. I think one of the things that makes me really hopeful is this group of women that I call the flyover women. Even though we're not, I live on one of the coasts. I don't live in flyover country, but I think it's an attitude about women that the women of the mean girls and the elite women in the culture sort of think we don't exist, and to a large effect, we don't even know that we exist, because of the fact that we're not in the limelight. We're not in the media. We're not represented in with any kind of equality. But what I'm seeing is that there are a lot of women like me who are saying, something's wrong. I don't know what it is. They're waking up and they're paying attention. They're really pressing into their motherhood and their relationships with their husband, and they're trying to be better women, and combating all of these things that really are destroying the culture. And so I'm seeing a lot of hope with the fact that these women are realizing that we're not alone anymore. Even groups like Moms for America or Moms for Liberty are doing incredible things. I think that this is sort of follows that pattern of what Phyllis Schlafly was able to do to stop the ERA back in the 70s. These moms groups are doing great work, and they're doing the right work because they're being targeted by the Biden administration and the Southern Poverty Law Center. So I think that there's some great hope there. And of course, always there's hope with God. We know that He's forming people, the right people for the right moment. That's something we see throughout history. The different saints that are there to push back against the culture and the evils and the sins of that particular day. So I think that we can have great hope, but much of that really depends on embracing this idea that women are made to be mothers, and we're made to live out that vocation. We're made to live within families. We're made to love our husbands. And it's through that's how we step by step rebuild the culture.
And the wonder of motherhood. You save the best for last, but I mean, women have superpowers, and so easily willing to reject those superpowers, things that only a woman can do, for a fake dream. Yeah,
I think that's exactly it. And that was actually the last chapter. I've actually had one friend of mine recently said, I just cried through that whole last chapter, because it was, after all this awfulness, I think she just it was so beautiful to start thinking about really these aspects of womanhood that are so denigrated or so ignored, or so, we just don't even pay attention to them. We don't know how to look for them anymore. And that was kind of the fun part, was just researching this of, how do we think about women, that even the romance languages, so why are there certain things in masculine and feminine? The words for like a river are feminine in many cases, that we carry things, that we improve things. Even, boats are another way in which we carry things, or another example of the feminine. This is why a boat always has a woman's name. So it's really fun to look both through, mythology, but also, of course, through scripture, at seeing what is it that we are not seeing about women that's so beautiful and vital and full of, like you said, full of wonder, that we can start marveling at again. And how do we start creating kind of a new grammar to help women understand these things about ourselves, instead of always, pushing us to this masculine, and how do we compete with men?
The criticality of genuine gender differentiated parenting is critical. So it's not just the beauty of a woman, which is something that should be focused on, but the need for a woman and a man to raise a family, the family being a central pillar of all of human civilization.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think that's the amazing thing, is just that complementarity that has been lost, and men don't know how to be men, and women don't know how to be women. But you're right, that vitalness. I mean, I guess that, I feel so grateful because I had an amazing father. I know amazing men. I have a great husband and brothers-in-law, and, so on. So many of us don't have that, but that's what we have to start rebuilding, is just a context in which people can see this, that's obviously been so lost in the culture. Just think about the sitcoms that we watch and the commercials that we see, and every man is an idiot, and the woman she's the savior that helps him figure out how to diaper a baby or something, that kind of attitude. So we have to get back to understanding the real gifts that men and women offer, and stop conflating them as if we do the same things, because we clearly don't. And there's in no way is that better highlighted than when a couple has a child together. And again, because of that vulnerability, brings out really the best of us, because it gets us out of our own selfish, narcissistic attitude, and takes us, pulls us into something smaller and tinier that needs us, that pulls us, out to being better human beings. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing when we allow it to really be what it is, instead of this deformation that we've been living with.
A final question. My son David is in studio, my oldest son, and he always asks the most profound questions. And he just slipped this note to me, wanting to ask you, Carrie, our cultural moment is all about redefining terms. If you could redefine and reclaim the term feminism, how would you do it?
Oh, man. Yeah, I think that's been the big debate. I don't think it can be done. I think people have tried to do it, and I think it's so laden with wreckage. It's almost like asking, can you redefine Nazism? I mean, feminism has been more deadly than Nazism. It's been more deadly than Stalinism. It's been more deadly than Mao. If you look at the number of abortions, we have 72 million just last year alone worldwide. So I think that's a great question I've asked myself for a long time, and I finally have just decided it's too wrecked. I think we need a new word for being pro-woman. I don't know what that is yet, but I just feel like that.
I hope you coin it.
I'll pray about that. See what comes to mind, but I haven't come up with the right thing yet. But in any event, I think that it's something that people want, and we'll see. Maybe we don't need it. Maybe we just need to really go back to just understanding humanity and human nature, and then it doesn't become an issue anymore. I'm not sure. So.
Well, you are a splendid example of what it means to be a woman. I admire you in so many different ways. You're a terrific writer. The End of Woman, How Smashing the Patriarchy Has Destroyed Us. This book is available for anyone who stands shoulder to shoulder with us in the battle for life and truth. You can get your copy on the web at equip.org. You can write me at Post Office Box 8500, Charlotte, North Carolina, zip code 28271. Again, the book, The End of Woman, the cover, that's a story in itself. It is intriguing, to say the least. The title is intriguing. The subtitle is fantastic, How Smashing the Patriarchy Has Destroyed Us. And Carrie Gress,
I've been called much worse. It's okay.
I'm a big fan. Sorry, I mispronounced your name, but yeah, this is available to anyone who stands shoulder to shoulder with us. All you have to do is let us know you want a copy of the book. We'll send it out to you. And thank you so much for being a wonderful guest on Hank Unplugged. Brilliant, insightful. You've blessed us all.
Oh, thank you. It's really been a pleasure to be here with you.
And remember, our mission is to bring the most interesting, informative, and inspirational people directly to you so you can learn from them. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe, rate, review. It helps a lot. And thanks so much for tuning into this edition of the Hank Unplugged podcast. See you next time with more.